Good, happy Sunday afternoon, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to This Week in this Sunday edition of Politics with Riley King. I'm Riley King, and let's begin. First up, let's take a look at your 2020 New Hampshire candidate tracker for today. We have two candidates in New Hampshire today. The first candidate, Michael Bennet. Bennet for American Day of Action Canvass launched in Manchester, New Hampshire. That was at 10 o'clock a.m. And the second candidate in New Hampshire today, Bernie Sanders. Town Hall at the American Legion in Hillsborough, New Hampshire at 1 o'clock p.m. And his second event, rally at South Church in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and that will be at 5 o'clock p.m. Several presidential candidates in New Hampshire on Saturday. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Siobhan Lopez.
I do not want to leave those people behind in this election.
In New London, Amy Klobuchar talks about the need for the party to recapture the support of those who may have voted Democrat in the past, but voted for Donald Trump in 2016 because they wanted to see a change.
If we can win big, and if we can bring people with us, that's what this is about. And the number one profound thing I'll say is we better not screw this up, okay?
The Minnesota senator is one of 6 who have qualified so far for the December debate.
The only people that win from our party are always the underdog.
Cory Booker positioning himself as that underdog while speaking in Merrimack. He says he has seen a wave of momentum following Wednesday's debate.
Tremendously so. We got more endorsements after that. Now we lead the entire field in New Hampshire, endorsements from New Hampshire leaders. So it's really wonderful, from state reps to state senators.
The New Jersey senator has met the fundraising threshold for the next debate, but still needs to meet the polling requirement.
And just keep going. That's what I'm going to do.
Michael Bennet vows to continue running in Londonderry. The Colorado senator says he's not concerned he hasn't qualified for recent debates, saying he doesn't feel they've made a difference in this race.
It's a lousy way to interact, and so I'm just going to come here and do town hall after town hall after town hall in New Hampshire, and I hope that's going to put me in the position to be able to do well here in February.
And on the Republican side, former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld greeted the thousands who attended the Concord Christmas Parade. Good morning, everyone. Siobhan Lopez, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Warren Sanders campaign in the Granite State. Democratic presidential candidates Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders were among those making stops in New Hampshire yesterday. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9, Tim Callery.
The basic idea is we take a version of Medicare, we make it available for anybody who wants it, but if for some reason you prefer a different plan, that's okay, I'm not going to make you switch. And I just think that's better than saying you've got to do Medicare whether you want to or not.
Elizabeth Warren introducing her new housing plan to a crowded Manchester Saturday night, vowing, if elected, to invest $500 billion in affordable housing over the next 10 years. Something she says will help states like New Hampshire increase their vacancy rates.
Understand this, it's up and down the line. It's for middle-class families, it's for working-class families, it's for the working poor, it's for the poor, it's for seniors who want to age in place.
Speaking with reporters, Warren gave her thoughts on former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg possibly entering the race after he has reportedly dropped a historic amount of money on new TV ads.
Elections should not be for sale. not to billionaires, not to corporate executives. We need to build a grassroots movement. That's how democracy is supposed to work.
Meanwhile, her current competitor, Bernie Sanders, letting loose on the campaign trail, having fun with voters at his Labor Solidarity dinner in Manchester. But the senator did get down to business, calling out what he describes as corporate greed in D.C.
We will create a political system in which billionaires do not buy elections, but a system based on one person, one vote.
The senator also showing support for unions, promising to implement legislation called the Workplace Democracy Act.
Our job is to grow the trade union movement. Our job is to put together an unprecedented grassroots movement of working people all over this country.
And Warren also had some little one-on-one time with voters during a canvassing event today. Meanwhile, Sanders will hold 2 events tomorrow, one in Hillsborough and one in Portsmouth, and he's pulling in some star power. Actress Susan Sarandon is said to join him. Live here in Manchester, I'm Tim Callery, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Problems with bail reform law discussed by Legislative Committee. Police say defendants released to commit more crimes. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Adam Sexton.
High-profile crimes and cases have prompted re-examination of the state's new bail reform law, which allows most offenders to stay out of jail after arrest.
The defendants have now been given the green light to go out and commit a crime, and the only thing that's going to happen to them is they're going to be inconvenienced by a 30-minute or a 45-minute trip to the station, and then they're going to be right back out on the street able to do what they want again.
Police say bail reform has created a catch-and-release approach to crime.
As long as you're not physically harming anyone, you can essentially do whatever you want with very few repercussions.
And county attorneys say the same thing is happening at the Superior Court level.
This is not just the smaller crimes. Imagine the conversations that are had by police departments and county attorneys' offices when you have felony-level crimes and the same questions are being asked, why is this person released again?
Many of these warnings were delivered to lawmakers before they passed bail reform in 2018, but those concerns were largely unheeded. Law enforcement also predicted a wave of defendants not showing up for court. Now, police prosecutors in Manchester say failure to appear rates for arraignments are at 30%, and that figure is even higher in other communities.
We have people that have been arrested 10, 12 times before they even face the original charge.
Supporters of bail reform are open to another round of compromise changes to fix things, but on issues like failure to appear, they also question whether judges are correctly interpreting the law.
Are we looking at a statutory problem, or are we looking at a problem where judges are not reading this provision the way it's written?
In Concord, Adam Sexton, WMUR News 9.
Okay, there you go on that video and that report. Secretary of State Gardner to announce 2020 presidential primary date tomorrow. Top election officials has said we're heading toward February 11th, but it will be official at a State House event starting tomorrow. Secretary of State Bill Gardner will formally announce the date of the 2020 New Hampshire presidential primary on Monday, according to a notice posted on his office website late Thursday afternoon. A longtime election official told WMUR last Friday that we're heading toward February 11th, the second Tuesday in February, but the official date will be set by Gardner on Monday at 1:00 p.m. Former NYC Mayor Michael Bloomberg officially enters 2020 presidential race. Let's take a listen to the video from ABC News.
Now to the Democratic presidential field, growing larger this morning as former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg makes it official, announcing he is running for president. ABC's Rachel Scott has more.
This morning, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg announcing he's in the race for president.
Jobs creator, leader, problem solver, Mike Bloomberg for president.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
Dropping more than $37 million on a TV ad campaign, the largest in the 2020 campaign cycle so far.
My staff just told me that Mayor Bloomberg's going to put millions of dollars in ads. So am I. Tomorrow? No, I'm not.
Those ads set to kick off today will air in several key states as Bloomberg eyes a presidential bid about 10 weeks before the first vote is cast.
I understand that rich people are going to have more shoes than the rest of us. They're going to have more cars than the rest of us. They're going to have more houses. But they don't get a bigger share of democracy.
In the fight to beat President Trump, sources close to Bloomberg say he's concerned no one in the field can get the job done. And if he opts in, he not only thinks he can, but he's willing to spend as much money as it takes to do it. But some Democratic candidates are firing back, accusing the billionaire of trying to buy the election.
Mr. Bloomberg, to the best of my knowledge, has very little grassroots support. Democracy means that billionaires cannot buy elections.
At this point in the race, some undecided voters were hoping the crowded field would narrow down by now.
A lot of them have very similar positions, so it's really hard.
I think we have candidates out there that are good. Don't need anyone else in the race.
And Bloomberg will have to win over undecided voters like those, but he does not need their cash. He plans to self-fund his campaign. His advisor telling me he has never accepted a single dollar in political contributions and does not plan on starting now. Tom?
Completely self-funded. All right, Rachel Scott. And on that point, let's bring in George Stephanopoulos, our chief anchor. He'll be hosting this week later today. Now, George.
I'm just chuckling at Rich saying he doesn't need their cash. I think that's an understatement.
Oh, yeah, completely. So, George, we just heard in Rachel's story, he's going to spend north of $30 million this week alone. The other campaigns are attacking him. They would love to have that financial freedom, but there's a real danger here. Jeb Bush sort of did the same thing. He raised this massive war chest, and it bought him little support.
Yeah, perhaps. Listen, I think we just have to start off by saying this is unlike anything we've ever seen before in presidential politics. Michael Bloomberg's worth at least $50 billion. We're reporting that he's going to spend in this first week alone $38 million. It's a lot more than that. We don't know the full numbers yet. The scale that he's talking about is unlike anything we've ever seen before. And what he's trying to do is basically turn March 3rd, Super Tuesday, into a national primary. Now, you're exactly right. Does money guarantee support? Absolutely not. Are there questions about whether Michael Bloomberg is a real Democrat? You're going to see those questions raised by other candidates. But this is, I think what he's doing here is throwing out the rule book with his bank book, and we're going to have to see what happens coming forward.
And this brings up my next question. You know, the qualifications for the debate demand a certain amount of unique donors. He has one donor himself. Does he go to the debate then?
I don't think he's going to be in that first debate. I think in December, after he gets in this week, I think that's unlikely. Remember, his plan is to skip those first four states, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina, make a big splash on Super Tuesday. It's a big gamble, and Bloomberg and his team admit that it's a big gamble. What they're banking on is the idea that Democrats still care more than anything else about electability, that he would be the most electable candidate against George W. Bush, and that they're looking to win.
Okay, on impeachment briefly, George, we saw that Rudy Giuliani has reemerged, and also this news that potentially one of his associates is working with some of the investigators in the impeachment. We saw a long week of testimonies, but this is still getting started.
Oh, absolutely. You've got many more steps to go in impeachment. Now the Intelligence Committee has to write a report. The Judiciary Committee has to consider articles of impeachment, then it has to go to the House floor. And then, of course, if the House votes to impeach, which looks likely right now, you have the Senate trial, which could go all the way through January, maybe even into February. And one of the big questions is going to be, will new information come out during that time frame? Will new witnesses be compelled to testify? That's the big wild card right now.
And Americans dealing with primaries and possibly impeachment. All right, George, thanks so much. And tune into This Week later this morning. George breaks down the impeachment hearings with our expert legal panel. Plus, he speaks with 2020 candidate Senator Amy Klobuchar, fresh off her debate performance. That's all coming up on This Week.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that is it for this Sunday edition of Politics with Riley King. I hope you all enjoyed this Sunday edition of Politics with Riley King. I'll see you back here next Sunday for another edition of Politics with Riley King. Have a great rest of your Sunday, everyone, and have a great week ahead of you. And we'll see you back here next Sunday. Goodbye.